First off, first Olympians in Powerline Podcast. So thanks for being the first ones, and thanks for making the trip here and getting to know you has been kind of cool over the last hour. So welcome here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Happy to be here.
Have you guys done much for podcasting?
No,
I've done
just media and TV.
yeah, media, TV, definitely that type of stuff, but nothing quite like this. So this is cool.
Cool. All right, Nic, let's start with you. Give me something from your past that helps me understand who you are today.
Oh boy,
what do I need to know?
I don't know. I think growing up, I was, and let me, I guess, get ahead of this by saying I had a lot of events. So sorry if my voice is shot for the rest of this podcast, but I did a lot of things growing up, different sports wise, and I think kept me very well rounded, and I think I learned a lot from balancing a bunch of things, and I think that's kind of fed through even into the workspace and into my life of being able to balance a lot of stuff, and I don't know, being well rounded in a lot of certain areas. So I don't know, I stayed active a lot growing up, and I think that kind of, you can kind of understand a lot about me, knowing that I'm spinning a lot of plates, but I like to do that. So I like to stay involved in a lot of things.
Was swimming like your only thing? Like, for example, like when I grew up, I played a lot of ice hockey. Mm-hmm. I almost like wasn't allowed to do anything else because if I injured myself, like skiing or something, Canada's great for skiing, especially BC. I could hardly ski, could hardly do anything of that because if I injured myself, I couldn't play hockey.
Right.
Was it the same for you, or like did you play multiple sports?
Yeah, I played a lot of things growing up. So it was, basketball, soccer, baseball, and then in high school I actually ran track in the fall, or cross country in the fall, and then swimming in the winter, and then tennis in the spring. So even through high school, I was pretty well balanced in a lot of that stuff. I didn't do too much skiing, especially even after I started collegiate swimming and stuff like that, because that can be hard on the knees, and breaststrokers in particular, we need our knees to be working pretty well. So, sure. I'd say I played a lot of sports growing up, and I think swimming was there's a lot to like about swimming. Obviously, some stuff to not like, the cold water, early mornings, but I appreciated the grind of it, and so I stayed well balanced in a lot of stuff, even through high school. But college is where I kind of got introduced to doing doubles, treating it as a full-time job, and kind of learning my way through the sport, and getting to the foundations of how to be a professional athlete.
Charlie, how about for you? What do I need to know about you?
I think something similar to Nic. I think I was had a well-rounded upbringing through the sport of swimming. Thankfully, always had good coaches, good parents who didn't necessarily push me too hard, let me kind of find my way in whatever sport I wanted to do. No one pushed me to the point where I didn't want to swim anymore. There's obviously tough times in every sport or anything in life where you might reconsider some decisions you make, or which ways to go. But people who always were in my corner, seemingly, and pushed me out of my comfort zone, but never, I guess, pushed me past that to a point that made me miserable, I guess you could say. But
burnout.
Yeah, that happens a lot. I mean, luckily I did other sports in middle school. I guess through middle school I kind of stopped. I kind of went to swimming only in early high school, and luckily I guess didn't start too early, because some people are great when they're 12, 13, and it seems like they have it all going for them, and then they kind of just peter out and end up sometimes hating the sport. So started doing better in sophomore, junior year. I was just able to keep surrounding myself with good people, good teammates, good friends, who allowed me to get to where I'm at today.
What do you think that balance is? Like, we talk about like not being pushed too hard, but being pushed enough. Like, I have a 20-year-old son, a 18-year-old son, and a 10-year-old daughter. I'm always like trying to figure out what that balance is of like, how hard do I push you? Like whether it's athletics or whether it's just like life things, like pushing them to get a job. Like it's how hard, like, do you think that line is subjective? Like it's personal, or what have you found for that line? Like how?
I think it's partially personal, but also I'll use an example of the past few years after college, where I reevaluated a lot of things a lot of times when I wasn't swimming great. But I think being open with your coaches and kind of trying as a professional swimmer, I felt more comfortable than in college per se. But I would be vocal with how I was feeling. Sometimes they'd be open to letting me do something different if I was beat down in a week, maybe doing like less yardage or whatnot. But sometimes they'd be like, no, I really want you to do this really hard set, and you'd be upset. Sometimes it'd be rewarding after the set. Sometimes you'd feel even worse. But over the long run, I think it is very beneficial for mental fortitude. But also, I think that just balance between knowing when to bring something up and knowing when to just be like, even though I don't want to do it, I just got to suck it up and do it personally before you go to your coaches. But also just keeping that balance between you and coaches and teammates good, keeping it healthy, and constantly reevaluating things with the people around you and just letting others know how you feel. And
do you think that's something you learned from your coaches or parents or?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Like I said, I've had a bunch of very good coaches throughout my career, starting from middle school coaches. But I think they taught me things like that. And I think as cliche as it sounds, I think they helped shape me not to just the swimmer who I am, but like the person I am today. So,
Nic, what's your thoughts on that? Like, especially now being a parent, I know your son's not of the age yet to swim.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him to get a job.
Throwing
3 months old. Yeah, no, it's interesting because I think one of the lessons I learned recently was, again, I'll be talking in cliches a lot with Charlie, is a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So while I think, I dedicated a lot of my career to just swimming, and it was great, and I saw, results that way, and it was a great way of going about it. But once I went back for, another degree, and I got a job with Quana, I found that, you can put eggs in other baskets and not necessarily take the eggs out of, the swimming basket. And I still wanted to be elite. I still wanted to be world class in swimming. But I found that, I think having something else on the side, having the job to not worry about, but, priorities can kind of shift, and you can still be good at everything. And actually pursuing excellence in one thing is, you learn a lot, and you develop good habits and routines for pursuing excellence in other things. So I think finding a balance was the right way for me to go about, swimming and in the work. I think it helped keep me sharp in my day job too. But I think, coaches, parents kind of teach you a lot of that stuff. If you're going to do it right. When you're young and maybe you want to join the swim team because you got friends there, but you don't want to go to a lot of practices. Okay, well, you sign up for the swim team, you got to go to the practices. You got to, or don't sign up, and that's fine. You can do other things, and we'll worry about it. So it's one of those things where you, kind of learn early on, if you're going to do it right, and, commit if you're going to sign up for something. So those are just some of the things that I think about when you talk about balancing or what you've learned about, keeping your priorities in different places.
One thing that, like, watching some of your guys' interviews and things like that, just like you'd get this question about balance, like balancing, how do you balance a full-time job and this and that? And I just laugh. I was laughing because you guys were laughing at that comment. Like, your comment back was like, it was fun. I did a bunch of things, but like, to a lot of just normal people, the thought of doing even one of those things at the level that you guys are doing it at is like daunting. Like imagine being an Olympic athlete and you know, getting a degree and raising starting a family and buying houses and is that something you had to develop, or is that just like innately who you are?
Well, I'd say on the front end, again, another cliche, it takes a village, right? And that's I'd say more true with all my successes these past few years is that, you know, my wife, she was also an Olympic swimmer. So a good, you know, example of that is we were at Cirque du Soleil, and in intermission, I got a call. Someone was waiting at my house for drug testing. And so I'm like, I really, I'm sorry. And she's like, no, I get it. Like, I know what you have to go through. And you know, I understand I had to go through that process too. So that's just an example of the way she, you know, was able to help me understand me and kind of help me through this process, and to get on board with, you know, a job that is, you know, so excited to have you pursuing, you know, the Olympic dream. It's been great, and they were really flexible with me. And, you know, my coach also is, you know, hey, I want to make the Olympic team, but I also have other priorities. I want to do well in the workplace and, you know, family stuff. Great. Let me know when you need to switch around workouts. And so it is, I couldn't have done it on my own, in that everyone, you know, had to bend and be flexible and malleable. And I think, you know, with that, it definitely helped me kind of balance everything. And so, I mean, yeah, it was a lot of hard work, but it was, you know, only possible because, you know, you have a good group of people around you who are kind of lifting you up.
I think this is like so important that you said that. And one of the things I've tried to help people understand is whether you're a business and you have like these employees, which is business employees, for example, like a lot of employees, most of us will never try to like make the Olympics or something like that, but it doesn't mean we don't have goals that we want to achieve. So it's like super important for companies and the village, whatever that is, whether it's your family, friends, or the business you work for, to help you reach those goals in the same way, with the same, like, you know, energy that you'd help an Olympic athlete reach that. I just kind of want to say that for anyone listening that's like on that side and go, oh yeah, let me help the people I work with and the people in my community to help reach their goals, even if it's just like whatever, you know, whatever that could be, a small goal but a big one to them.
Rising tide lifts all boats.
100%. Yeah, 100%. What? Give me a little scale of like what your guys' achievements are. Like, brag a little bit here for a second, Charlie. What have you done for people listening in context?
Well, I was the VISAA Swimmer of the Year in 2016.
There you go.
I think it all started with trying to achieve those accolades in high school swimming, trying to get state records, or I had a great group of guys who I trained with at club, who I'm still best friends with. There's like 8 or 9 of us, so we were always pushing each other, trying to break each other's records. But past that, in college, you always think about like NCAA champion or team champion, which I never got to. I A-finaled once in college, but I guess you could say that the short pool is not my forte. But in the summertime, it was always try to make the national team. And I was able to do that in 2017 was my first year, so the summer after my freshman year. And that was, once NCAA's was over, it shifted to summer season, and that was always my focus. After the college year was to try to just get on the national team again. And after that became more of like something I wanted to maintain every year instead of trying to make it, was when I would focus on what the next steps would be to make the bigger and bigger meets. So I think went on a couple junior team international trips, which I think helped give me some experience with going on a trip with 60 people, or maybe not that many at that time. But so my first national team trip was actually with Nic, and we went to Lima, Peru for 2019 Pan Ams. And that was the first, I think that you could consider that like a breakthrough meet for me.
It's a massive platform.
I didn't know. I think it's like the second biggest sporting event after the Olympics, or like
it's got to be something
by
Yeah.
people involved or whatnot.
Sure.
And I was able to win there, which was pretty awesome. So I was rolling good going into 2020 trials, and then COVID happened, and then I moved to Texas. Was able to make the Worlds team, so that kind of kept pushing me to keep going through the next quad through 2024. Had a bad year in 2023, and then surprised myself making the 100 breast for Paris. I think one of the cool things about, you said brag a little bit, one of the cool things about me is that I was trained as like a 400 IM guy in college and in high school, and I made an international team in that. And then a couple years later, I made it in the 200 breaststroke, because I've always been a breaststroker, but not on that stage. And then I surprised myself with making the 100 breaststroke. So it's like going from quite possibly one extreme, besides maybe like the mile. 400 IM is one of the more brutal events.
For sure.
And then somehow making a sprint event this year. So it's been a kind of a roller coaster, but I wouldn't have wanted it to go anywhere else.
How is that different, like mentally preparing for those two events? Because they're in all intents and purposes like miles apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's college training through, I guess, the past year was a lot of yardage and a lot of threshold workouts, where it's just try not to get down on yourself when you're swimming. And I mean, Nic's done the 200 before, and he knows how that goes. You never did 400 IM, did you?
No, I didn't mess around on that 400
Because I imagine if you're training for 400, it's a long time in the water compared to 100. Like you were talking about 50 and 100 being, like 50 being really quick.
Yeah.
You know, I can't imagine. I imagine it felt the same way. Like 100 must feel super quick when you're training for 400.
I think it definitely helped me though, because 400 IM you would swim every stroke in practice, which would make it not great. It'd make it even harder too.
No, that's the hardest part of the 4M is that you get a fresh set of muscles for every 100, and then you have to exhaust those and switch to the next stroke.
That is true, but it was. I guess it kind of tapered down towards the end. And this past year, I was talking about earlier. I tried to talk to my coaches at the very beginning of the year, and be like, I understand, because I guess I was training for the 200 all year, but I wanted to go from swimming the 400 IM and the 200 breast to swimming the 200 breast and the 100 breast. So I was like, I want to mix in some sprint in there, and I would do occasional sprint practices, but I have a vivid memory of training trip. We went to Fort Lauderdale, and I got stuck in a practice doing like 18 200 frees, long course with 8 people in a lane or whatever. And I was like, why can I not just go over to sprint group? But then they let me taper at the end of the season. It's only sprint. So I had my hands in both worlds, and it worked out. So
What's your tally for medals?
Like international medals?
Yeah. Like give me your top ones that your crowning achievements, the ones you're proudest of.
I think in college I won Big Tens 4 years in a row in the 400 IM, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
And Michigan has a really deep history of 400 IMers. Like there's a few guys who have done that. I think they've when I was a senior for like 10 or 12 years or something, a Michigan guy had won the 400 IM except for like 1 year in the middle of that. So going in, people were like, you could do that again, keep that streak going. So that was pretty awesome. And then definitely Pan Ams. And I didn't swim great at Worlds in 2022, but making that meet, Nic and I tied at international team trials that year. I guess winning a national championship. It's not called national championships, but
sure.
The big meet for the year domestically. And then obviously the Olympic medals are pretty cool as well. So, and I think getting 1-2 with Nic at trials was some of the best parts of the whole Olympic experience. So,
how about for yourself? Brag for a minute.
Let's see. This past summer was a big highlight for me, where I got 2 silver medals, 1 individually, 1 on a relay, and then I was lucky enough to get a gold medal on a mixed medley relay and set a world record with Team USA. So, that's definitely one of the highlights of, not only my career, but a lifetime. Right. But then I was also able to get, I think, 25 world championship level medals, whether it's long course or short course. I have a couple of American records, short course, American record, long course, and then some relay records sprinkled in there too. So I guess one of the cool stats that I think is pretty cool is I became the oldest first-time medalist for USA Swimming in like the modern era. So I think since 1908 or something. So in first-time Olympic medalist at 31. I think that's pretty cool. And those are some of the top accolades I could think of.
Do you think that's an indication? Like, are you an anomaly, or are you seeing like, is there a trend towards athletes getting older because of new tech?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a couple things. Like, there's definitely some survivorship bias in that. I think swimming's the sport where you may leave the sport for a variety of reasons. And if you continue, there's not necessarily, you don't peak at 23, 24 like you think. Not everyone does. You can peak later on in life. And, especially in the shorter sprint events, I'd imagine that for guys, the peak is much later. So for me, I think I had special circumstances where I can continue swimming for as long as I wanted to. And I think, I wouldn't say, I think, survivorship bias in that not many people do, but I think if more people did, you'd find, maybe
Sure.
the prime age be a little higher than what is typically thought of for swimming. I'd say it was, consistency for a long time helped me there too. And that my first international team trip was 2013 World Championships. So I've been making, travel teams for
a while.
over 10 years. And while I wasn't, back then I was happy to break a minute in World Championships, and that was great. And, now my best time is 58.3, something like that. So a, good 2 or 3 second gap there where, that's over the course of 10 years. And, every year I was able to learn, I don't have best years every year, but I was able to learn from it and kind of gather. And I think I surrounded myself with a good group of coaches that were able to kind of help prepare me for, a long career and something like that. So, I'd say, is it maybe hopefully going forward that more people stick in the sport? Because I don't think you peak right in college or right after college. I think, if you can stick it out a few more years, who's to say that those won't be your best years?
I think that's good for people to know.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people are done with swimming when they're done with college, which is completely fine. But I feel like the past few years, I never trained with Nic, like, ever, except at meets. But I think Nic was always one who you kept getting better and better from, like, I don't know, 2018, 2019. It's just like, and that's when I was starting to get out of college. So Nic was always the guy who kind of helped show me that there, like, you can, especially breaststrokers. I would look at him and I'm like, he's getting faster. Why can't I get faster? And that, kind of helped in the past few years too. So, but just fun fact.
I've seen, and this is kind of related to this, but I've seen a quote from you, Nic, that says swimming wasn't going to get in the way of life.
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention that because a lot of linemen, just speaking from the lineman perspective and the listener, they adopt line work and being a lineman as their complete and sole, a lot of them, sole identity. Like, it just becomes who they are, but it becomes their life. I imagine swimming is no different, or anything that you're doing, like, especially that caliber. Do you think that, like, some sort of, like, separation there was healthy for you to, like, also have another life and other pursuits and other goals and dreams and hobbies or whatever it is? Maybe speak to that a little bit, because I think that that's something that helps you prolong that thing that you love to do as well. It's like, don't just make that the thing, because you'll burn out on it.
Absolutely.
Basically, like, I burned out on hockey.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact, and I probably could have gone further with it, but I was just done.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. No, I I'd say, I'd say, yeah, I just lost my train of thought. Life doesn't wait, right? So it's one of those things where I dedicated, 4 or 5 years to just professional swimming. And had I just gone straight into balancing a work swim balance, I would have probably been like, well, what could have been, right? I am happy that I did dedicate some time to just, let me put my head down. Let me just see what happens, right? I found out that wasn't the best way for me to go about it, because I found that, having a different identity helps me kind of grow in both spaces. But one of the things that is very challenging for athletes, in particular elite athletes, when they're done, is that was their identity, is swimming or whatever sport. And once that's done, what are you? And I think also, you can try other things and you're like, wow, I'm not the best in the world at what I do, and I'm so used to like being in that world class. And it's like a hard transition. It sounds kind of weird to say that, I'm not going to step into an office and be the best in the world, right? That's just ludicrous. So I think that transition is hard for a lot of swimmers and athletes in general. But I think kind of, again, getting my feet wet in a job, in a different environment where, I'm listening to the people who've been linemen for forever now in the office, and because that's where I am. So they have all the experience and I have none. And I'm I go on the pool deck and I'm the old guy. I'm the guy with all the experience. And so I think kind of the fact that I was able to get that while I was swimming is really helpful, and that helped me in the transition of moving away from the sport, but also being new to something and having to learn and having to grow. So yeah, and I just after Tokyo, after those games, I dedicated my whole life to swimming, and life wasn't going to wait anymore, and it can only you can only put it off for so long, especially when you want to get married, buy a house, start a family. I was looking into getting another degree, starting a job, because at some point that stuff was going to have to come. So not everyone's ready right away, and I get that, but I was ready then, and I grew up an appreciation for balancing both.
Yeah, because the athletes, like, you're done at in your 30s, and it's like, you're retired. Now what? I got like 70 years left.
Right. Yeah, and for a lot of people, that's all they know is swimming, and they're exceptionally good at it, and it's just tough. The skills translate, certainly, in that a lot of people will thrive in whatever they do after, because they have so many intangible skills. But it's just making that transition and using everything you learned and putting it in a office or whatever job situation.
Charlie, do you let that go on a high, or do you ride that out? Like, what are you dealing with right now? Are you considering that right now, like almost like retirement or whatever, or continue on?
No, I think you got to end on a high note for me personally. I've enjoyed having the working for HBK and Quanta the past couple of years, and I think that showed me that. I mean, you could, if I hadn't made the Olympics, I think you might get a different answer, but I think I was able to end on a high note, accomplish like the biggest goal I've ever had since 2008. I think seeing Phelps swim was like, I want to be an Olympian too, and it's always in the back of your mind. And finally being able to accomplish that, I feel satisfied. And I'm ready to start the next stage of my life as well, and see that progress, hopefully on a similar path and success level as swimming. I know it'll take a while. Swimming took 17 years, but I'm looking forward to it. I don't know. See in 2026, 2027 if I get an urge to come back to it or not. But for now, I'm happy where I'm at. Happy to be here with Quanta, and looking forward to the next stages of life.
It was always one of the weirdest things for me. Not that I was ever going to make the Olympics in any sort. But I think every kid kind of dreams of that, you know, like every kid that plays sports dreams of like being standing on the Olympic stage. And I remember distinctly like hitting 30 and just being like, I'll never be in the Olympics. Not that it was ever like a thing or even something I was like pursuing, but like now I'm just like too old. This is never going to happen. I don't know. I just remember that distinctly as like a weird moment. Like, okay, not that it was ever a thing, but yeah.
I feel like the Olympics kind of took over the back of my mind for the past, probably since 2019 was really like, I might have a shot at this. I wouldn't say I ever got to the point of an obsession, but it is always that thing that you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
And it gets to a point where you might not think of it in the luster, is that the right word, of the Olympics, as what it is. It's just something you have to accomplish. But I didn't even realize until getting there how special it is to not even the athletes who are there, but people make vacations out of going to the Olympics. It's not just family and friends. Like I see people...
More than just a competition.
Yeah. You'll see like Instagram stories of people you haven't talked to since high school or middle school, and they're like picture in front of the Eiffel Tower with the rings. Yeah. I'm like, that's pretty cool. I've never thought of it as like a spectacle. I've always kind of thought of it as a goal. So getting to finally go to it, you kind of see the whole aura surrounding the Olympics to the people who aren't going every day to try to make it. Which is, I've been telling people I want to go to LA if I decide to try to make it somehow, I don't know. But at least going as a spectator, it's because it's not too hard to get to, but getting to experience it in a different way would be pretty awesome.
I got to go to the 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver.
Nice.
And it was awesome. I got to see a couple ice hockey games. It's the sport I love. And just even being in the city and being in the atmosphere. And it was like a beautiful year for weather-wise, too. And Vancouver's just very picturesque. Mountains. And just the whole atmosphere of the city was like super cool to be around that just as a spectator. Even like just the energy was intense. It was cool. Definitely worth going to. I hate to see that. I don't know, you just hear lots of things about Olympics like it's dying, attendance is dying, or these sorts of things, but I hope that it can find a way to continue because it's special, it's different.
It's definitely different atmosphere around it for sure.
What were some of the biggest sacrifices? Like, speak to some of the biggest sacrifices you've had to make or a person has to make to get to that level.
I think nothing comes off the top of my head as something major, but it's
well, that's why you're a champion.
That's a good point. But like in high school, your friends might be hanging out on like a Friday night or something, but I got to the habit of going to bed at 9:30 or 10 in high school because I
had to recover.
I had to wake up at 3:45 to drive to practice. But little things like that, like there's stupid swim meet shirts that say like, sorry, I can't, I have swim practice in the morning or something. But then little things like only have such limited time for vacations in the summer.
Or when you do take vacations, you're always like, okay, well, what's the pool schedule? Where can I train? And like having that lifted off is nice too. Yeah.
And things like no spring break in college, have to be back at school at 26th of December to fly to training camp for a week, it's usually in Florida, which is nice, but sometimes not going home for Thanksgiving. Little things like that. Nothing from me that too detrimental to anything, but a lot of those little things, I guess, add up. And now we were talking about like our weekends are so open now. It's just been so long that some little things like that you have to be like, wow, you just take them for granted. So realizations.
I'd say there was definitely a string of sporting events where they were like, this is the best World Series, this is the best Super Bowl, this is the best. And I was in bed for all of it. I'm like, man, I'm a sports guy, so I was like, I wish I could stay up and watch some of this stuff. But I mean, that's like a half answer for your question. But and Charlie's younger than me, so he I think hasn't been doing it for quite as long. But man, sometimes I reflect and say like, swimming's a grueling sport where you're tired for most of the year and then you kind of taper, and you can taper, sometimes during the year, but for most of the year, you're just exhausted and tired. And, I was tired throughout my entire 20s, it's like, that's kind of a hard realization, and that, I didn't really get to do too, swimming was awesome and amazing, and I learned so much, went to so many places, but man, the daily grind of just like a decade of just, I was tired.
It's prepped you for your 30s and having babies now.
Well, yeah, there you go. Yeah, is very, very regimented and stuff for fatherhood and stuff. But that's one of the, I think, sacrifices is like, man, I spent a long time just kind of grinding away at sport, and it brought me so much, but it did take a lot of sacrifices, especially on vacations. And, I think there was certainly personal relationships, family, friends that, at some point had to take not necessarily a back seat, but just, priority shifting, and they all get it. And that's great. But, I think if I could have balanced those better, that would have been nice. But, those are some of the sacrifices, I would say.
Speaking from the perspective of mindset, in the position that you're in now, what would you give for advice to those people that are like your 18 to 20-year-old self, trying to figure out direction of life and like going through the struggles and like thinking they're making big sacrifice and like knowing what you know now and what you've been through? What would you like say to them for advice, or even just like, hey, chill, it's going to be...
I think in a swimming sense, if I'd not known I'd like get to make the Olympics, I think I would have told myself to enjoy it. I usually had fun with it, but in like the tougher times, to just know that if you trust your training, it typically works out at the end of the season. And even, I guess, progressing after college, if I had been able to instill that in myself, I think I could have made a little bit less mentally tough. But that's what when parents ask me to tell their kids bits of advice, I try to tell everyone to just enjoy it. Swimming's different because you don't get to talk to people during practice, really. You get the wall, but sometimes that it could be 2 minutes or it could be 5 seconds or something. Yeah. So it's tough in that sense, but especially in college athletics, you commit somewhere because you like the people there, in addition to other things. But you got to just enjoy and take for granted the people who are around you, and just have fun with it.
Yeah, I'd say the same, in that I think, I made my first world championship team in 2013, and that was kind of my moment of, okay, I can make the Olympic team. Like all it takes is being top 2. I just did that at world championships. I'm a young dude. I'm going to get better. Let's do it. So, and it was kind of, I think, more of a robotic approach of, I have to make the Olympics, and I'm going to train. And if I have a bad practice, I'm going to be upset with myself. I'm going to, be angry and I have to make the Olympics, and here's what I got to do. Here's what I do. I have to make the Olympics. And, in 2016, I was seeded to make the team, and I completely spun my wheels at trials. And I think I was 7th in both the 100 and the 200. So missed the team. And I think after that, I kind of found my love for the sport again, and that, I considered not swimming again, and just because I took it really hard. But I think finding my love for the sport and kind of remembering that, having a good time with enjoying the moments with your teammates, you get to, maybe you get to go to the Olympics. Maybe you get to go to world championships. You don't have to, right? It's not a defining moment. And I think I put too much pressure on myself to make that. So I think kind of having a more relaxed view of just, don't let it define you in the sense that, being an Olympian is everything. Being an Olympian is great, but it's not everything. And, people have very successful careers being at world championships or being at Pan Ams or being at Pan Pacs, whatever meet you qualify for. Making the U.S. national team is hard. It is not easy. And, that's one of the more cutthroat sports, and it's a very high level to make the national team. If you make the national team, that's great. You don't have to make that next meet. And I think kind of that realization is something I would tell myself when I was younger, because I definitely put a lot of pressure on myself to make those accolades.
One of the things I've been trying to tell people through the podcast and doing my best at trying to tell people is like to be present and like just enjoy whatever moment you're in, because it's the process. You hear a lot of people say this, enjoy the process, but like truly, each one of those meets you were at was a different moment in your life that you can probably recall, and you'll never get to do that again. In that sense, you'll never be that person again. And it was this quote, like, one day will be the last time that you pick your kid up and hug them and they're in your arms, like, and I think about that now with like 20 and 17 year olds, like, I'll never hold them again. Like I would when they were kids, right? Like I hold my 10-year-old, and one day was the last. And like, you don't necessarily know what day that was. Yeah. It's the same thing. Like I love the trade of line work. It was like one of those things I had attached it as like a lifestyle. It was wonderful. And there was a last tower, and like there was a last pole I was on. There was a last time I was in a bucket truck. Like maybe I'll do it again because I'm still in the like maybe it'll happen, but not in the same respect. I won't be up working on the tools side by side with somebody that we're laughing and joking and having a good time and working. Like there was a last. I don't know which one it was. I don't remember it because I probably wasn't completely present in it. Right. It's the same sort of thing. I think we just need to like make that a little bit more important sometimes. Yeah.
No, I mean, especially in our sport, I'd say you're very lucky if you can decide when you're done. A lot of people, it just happens to them. And I think Charlie and I were both lucky enough to at least have the Olympic experience where I think we're comfortable walking away from the sport, whether or not that is our last meet ever, who knows, but I think we're very lucky in that sense where I think we kind of knew going into it, like, this is a special experience and let's enjoy it. Been on a million trips to meets and, meal rooms, training camps, stuff like that. And, trying to be present for this last one was definitely on my mind. And, it helps when you prepare yourself for all the things that come with swimming in the Olympics, competing. So you actually don't have to think that much when you get there, and all the work's already done, so you can kind of be there and try to enjoy it. And that's what, we tried to tell, the rookies this year was, try not to get too caught up in all the Olympic stuff, because it's a lot of fun, but you're here to do, a job and you're here to compete. So really try to enjoy competing at the highest level in the sport and the biggest stage. And, hopefully a lot of people were able to kind of capitalize on that.
How's your mindset, like from a mental health perspective? We touched on this a little bit before we hit record, but there is still stigma out there, especially since, like, I call them the old guard, but just the older guys are kind of like hitting the boomer age and the retirement age. And that was kind of the era that were a little harder and more resilient to wanting to discuss. How's your like mind game changed over the years? And like, what have you learned through competing and life, I guess?
Yeah, I'd say, it was definitely, pretty stigmatized in athletics and in sports and stuff like that for a long time. But now people are starting to realize that it's almost like any other part of your body, and it's like a muscle. If your shoulders hurt, you're not going to perform well, right? And so if someone, mentally isn't ready to perform, you almost got to treat it like, a soft tissue issue, something that you can, I go and get rehab, I go and get, prehab. There's exercises you can do to strengthen that muscle to prevent it from hurting again and from whatever. So, you treat it like a body part in that, it's part of the whole package of being a world-class athlete is the mental aspect. And some people are so strong mentally, nothing phases them and they're ready to rock and roll whenever. But for other people, it takes work and it takes exercise. There's, visualization, there's, people you can talk to and stuff like that. And to help deal with anything. So I think knowing that, it's okay to reach out to people who are experts in that, and that, all the world-class athletes, they have someone to talk to because, they know it's an important part. And if you're not training that, you're leaving something on the table. So I think it's become a lot less stigmatized in the athletic and sports world. And I'm happy for that, because it's like any other injury. If you're not feeling mentally, ready to compete.
Yeah, we have at trials, you have a thing called processing where you get to do a lot of people's favorite part of the whole thing. Not favorite, but one of them, because you get to like try on all the gear and get sized for everything. But there's a station of just like administrative stuff you have to do. And one of them, we have a couple mental health professionals on staff at USA Swimming who come to meets or training camps with us. And there's a station, and I was like, I didn't expect to have that station and the whole processing thing, but apparently there's a little bit of a come down after the Olympics. Some people struggle you're at like the highest of highs, and you go back to normal life, which I felt a little bit after, but just knowing they have all bases covered like that now, at least within USA Swimming, is pretty awesome. Just trying to just have the resources, and a lot of people utilize them all the time. So, and it's also nice having, whether it be training camp or a meet, having someone you can lean on if anything ever happens. So
I love that aspect too. Like you're leaving something on the table if you're not addressing it. I think you can directly scale that to just the everyday, regular, normal person. If their everyday, regular, normal life, like, are you trying to get better in life, even at your job, just in like personal goals and achievements, even if they're small? Like, it's just a piece of it. Like you would train and go to the gym or go for runs or whatever. Like, just go train your brain.
Yeah.
It can be that simple. I know it's not quite that simple, because like there can be like a lot of trauma attached to stuff like that. But even that, like that's what professionals are for. And it doesn't have to be that serious. That's cool. Yeah. On that note, is there anything like you guys have learned then in visualization tactics, techniques? Like, how do you handle the extreme pressure of competing at that level? How do you deal with that? Is there you guys have special techniques that you've learned that you could like pass on?
I wouldn't say I have any techniques. I guess I probably could have tried to utilize some of that stuff. And it worked out. But I think maybe something for me is in 2016, I was still in high school. Every meet has pressure. Making a national meet final was always a goal. But I think something that might have helped me this past trials with the pressure was in 2016. I got 11th in the 400 IM in high school, and 3 people scratched. So I got scratched into the final, which I didn't anticipate on happening. So I kind of got that little bit of experience before I even stepped into college meets, which I think helped. But I never really visualized. I probably should have, but I definitely would think about my races all the time. I never try to get in the mindset of closing my eyes and like picturing myself stepping up on the blocks and going and stroke counts and whatnot. But there are definitely times where at meets, I would be thinking about the race so much between sessions that I would try to nap, and my heart's just going like not able to sleep. So probably could have utilized some stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that, you tie a lot to the results, right? So in your head beforehand, you're probably going through any sort of permutation of the result, and what if I fail? What if I don't go this time? What if I get touched out, et cetera, et cetera? And I think the best people don't subject themselves to that thought process, and I know it's not always you can't help it, but I think you train your brain to just live in the details every day, and that you're doing everything right, so that when you get to the pool, I mean, there's always things you can't control.
Sure.
but everything you can control is familiar. And, you're stepping up on the blocks at the Olympic Games, but then you realize it's 100 breaststroke. And how many of those have you done? 1 million. How many, times have you dove into the water, done a pull out and started your race? A lot, so it's things like that where, I think if you work on the details every day, you kind of can take your brain out of it, behind the blocks. And then I think getting ready, I try to, again, disassociate myself from the result, and that, keep telling myself it doesn't matter. Like I'm every step of the way. If I don't make the Olympic team, it doesn't matter. I have this much going for me in my life, and, this is all great. And you look at the positives, and rather than be like, well, what if I don't make it? Like what is that funding tied to that? Is my career in swimming over? Is, how much of that is tied up in this race? A lot, but it doesn't matter. It's like kind of freeing yourself that way. And I think different mindsets, because you could sit a bunch of people down in these chairs and they'll tell you something different. So that's I think the beauty of the sport, is that it's different for everybody. And I think everyone has different bugs that kind of scratch their brain in different ways. But for me, that was always kind of how I kind of approached it. Was kind of, millions of people are watching, but, does it matter how I swim? No one's gonna, no one's gonna remember, specifics and stuff like that. So there, it's fine in that sense. And I think prepping every day like you're going to swim at the Olympic final is a good way to get ready to swim for the Olympic final, and it sounds, more complicated than it is, but I assume it's like just training, doing everything right. And, even the details, even if, getting to class on time, doing stuff, it's things like that where, all that stuff is just habits that stack, and by the end result, the final exam, the last race, the big project, whatever, your mind's completely out of it because you're just, so in the zone, I guess.
How much of that, if any, do you apply to regular everyday life too? Like your job, your 9 to 5, your family?
Yeah. I mean, I think all that stuff carries over. I think it's, habit forming and that state of mind is, something that definitely, permeates into other parts of your life. And, if you're very regimented, swimming's a very, time-based sport, and, you show up at a certain time for practice, and once practice starts, essentially everything's on a clock. So, I think that is very useful. And, for career-wise, deadlines, we get deadlines because we know, everything leads up to certain moments in swimming. And, I think there's certain things about our sport in particular where it translates well into everyday life stuff. And, everyone's different in that sense, but everyone brings something over.
I think college athletics help a lot too, because, honestly, I don't think my time management or whatever or other skills like that have changed a lot in the past 4 years compared to the 4 years of college. Going to college and instantly having to balance a course load and 20 hours a week of practice and tutors or eating or going to class, catching the bus as an 18-year-old is it's a lot to learn, but it helps you learn fast. And I think those skills I learned in probably the first 2 months of college, I still use today, how to plan everything out. And it's funny. You don't think might not realize at the time how it'll apply to the rest of your life, but it's pretty cool to think about how it does.
I honestly think that if you take nothing else away from college, university, or school, you should take away learning how to learn. Take that into the rest of life. I think so many people are like, college is a waste of time. I think if you could just even go there, not even to learn something specific, but just learn how to learn. I don't think enough of us know how to learn. I'm still doing things in my 40s to train and teach myself on how to learn better and quicker and faster, and techniques I could have learned in college, but I never went to college. I went to trade school. There's that.
No, there's a lot of people I think who get degrees and then their career is something different. But what the degree tells people is that you've learned some of those skills, and you've learned how to just be in that environment and learn. You're willing to learn, take courses, change everything. And I think that's one of the cool things about, an education that I think, and it's not necessarily, if you didn't get one, you don't have these skills, but it definitely shows, college athletics that not only are you willing to do all the things physically demanding of your sport, but also you're still willing to go to class. You're still willing to kind of do all those things right too. And yeah, I think learning to learn is one of the biggest things that you can experience in college. And you get a crash course in that with athletics for sure.
I noticed learning how to prioritize. That was one of the struggles I always had with anything. I still struggle with it, but learning how to choose the thing that's the top priority, even if it's saying no. Yeah. Learning how to pick that and run with it, and then prioritize that in your schedule and schedule yourself. That's all super, super important stuff to take into life and career. Biggest takeaway from Paris. What did you like? Yeah, personal side or just biggest experience? What was your greatest experience coming out of that?
I think.
Did you have a moment that was holy shit? I'm look where I am.
I think getting to the village is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's really cool. For me, it was standing on the podium after winning the gold and setting a world record, and seeing the flag raised and kind of singing the national anthem with your teammates. I mean, for me, that was definitely a moment of wow, this is the pinnacle of sport. That's really cool. And I think that was kind of my biggest takeaway from my experience.
So I didn't do that, but I think something similar is coming out for my individual heats. You're in the ready room with all the people in it. You swam against them before, kind of how they do the race, but just coming out and having to remind yourself that it is the Olympics was pretty awesome. And I think maybe not a particular moment, but of the whole process of trials to the Olympics is just seeing people excited to see you. They know your name. People I never anticipated on strangers knowing my name.
Sure.
Even after trials, I kind of arguably snuck in to an event that I wasn't expecting to. But with that whole process, there's people who are like, Charlie, or whatnot, but wanted you to sign everything. It's pretty sweet. And hearing family members tell them that their friends have congratulated them, or people you might not have ever heard of before, just knowing how far it reaches even friends and family. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. People come out of the woodwork, but not only, in a supportive way, and that you're wow, I didn't even realize you still followed what was going on. And obviously the Olympics is, a whole different deal, but people you haven't heard from in years being wow, I'm cheering for you. Can't wait to see you on TV. And you're oh, that's pretty cool. It's there's a whole community out there of supporters you didn't even realize you had. So people
you haven't talked to in a while saying they woke up at 4 a.m. to watch you swim.
Yeah.
Kind of cool.
That's a commitment.
Yeah.
That's pretty. Do you feel you guys allowed yourselves the moment that you feel you deserved there? Do you feel you allowed yourselves that moment when you're there to go, holy cow, this is pretty cool? Because it happens quick.
It really does.
Even a few hours is quick. It's a few moments.
Yeah. I tried, and I think people try, but it's hard to really appreciate it, I think, because you're there on a mission and you're there to compete, and while you're wow, let me just stay in the moment and realize what this means, but then you switch gears and you're okay, well, what do I have to do to get ready for tomorrow? What do I have to do to get ready for XYZ? So for me, it's one of those things where I try to remind myself to slow down, but you just get kind of I don't know, in the zone, and you're trying to compete, and there's just more going on. I feel just enjoying the moment.
Yeah. The something I kind of regret is by the end of it, I arguably was kind of ready to go home because we'd been gone for like over a month.
Yeah.
And I left and I was like, I wish I hadn't felt that way because it's the Olympics. We left and there was still a week of competition left. But I'd love to just be able to go back and outside of the pool. I think going back on one of the memories is like being like kids in a candy store. Like we all got our keys in the village, and I roomed with a bunch of guys I swam with at Texas. So we were all friends. Some had roomed together before. We all like raced up to the room, and all your gear is just lying there. And we got there at probably like 11:30 or something, and people are up to like 1, like trying everything on. And it's like the little things like that. Just wish I could go back and do again.
Yeah.
But definitely have great memories to think back on. And I can't believe it's been 5 months since it all happened. But yeah, I think I did a good job of soaking it up though, because there are bits and pieces I can think back on about just like going to get coffee with someone, passing megastar athletes, but be cool to do it again. But yeah, I don't know.
I think it's great. I think it's just, I love listening to it because it's just a great metaphor for life as well. Like, again, just you think everyone can think of their own moments, whether it's just like their kids. Like like I said, my kids are old. I got older kids now, and I'm just thinking, man, I remember those times I used to sit in the chair in their room and just like watch them fall asleep. Sit there and wait for them to fall asleep at night, and just like you'd be. A lot of the times you just be like, all right, come on, fall asleep. I got things to do. I got to finish emails or something stupid, and looking back on it now, it's like, man, you just got to like really respect those moments because they don't come around every day, I think it's cool. Setbacks. Have either of you had setbacks that you've had to deal with within your careers? Injuries, things like that have...
Yeah, I'd say, this is, I tell kids at clinics a lot, this story in particular, because I think it's a good example of resilience in some sense, in that I was, I just missed this team in 2016, right? I'd talked a little bit about that before, and I got my mojo back a little bit, making the World's team in 2017, and then missed the Pan Pacs and World's teams in 18-19, so I was able to go to Pan Ams with Charlie and actually had a really good year. So kind of getting into a good rhythm and confidence building going into the Olympic year. And that I was ready to kind of put my head down and make it. So COVID obviously happened and pushed everything back a year, which is fine. You make the necessary adjustments. It's hard for a lot of people. And I think our group was just kind of ready to, re-roll in 2020 into 2021 and keep going. So we were doing a lot of, activities outside of the pool, just to keep fresh and stay in shape while, our pool time was limited. And I actually fell and I broke a bone in this wrist that needed surgery. And then I tore a ligament in this one. Thankfully I didn't need surgery on this one because, I wasn't sure how I was gonna wipe, So I had a hard cast one, soft cast the other, and it all kind of came to one moment where I was like, I had all this momentum going into the Olympic year. It's fall of the Olympic year, finally, even after the year delay, getting myself geared up for another year of Olympic level training. And then I go and have this major injury where I have to be out of the water for, I think it was like 6 to 8 weeks. And there was this series of competitions, ISL, in Europe that it was like a bubble competition. So there was competitions every week for like a month and a half. And I had signed up to go, just broken my wrist, and they let me come a little late, which is, actually I think one of the reasons why I ended up doing so well in 21, because I was like, okay, I'm going to get in shape as much as possible. I'm not allowed to sweat. I'm not allowed to swim, so I was doing little things to try to kind of just keep my strength up, and eventually I was able to, ride bikes, and so I did that and to keep my aerobic up, and I get to ISL, I'm finally taking the cast off, ready to go, and I swim a 200 breaststroke, and I add about 11 seconds to my time. And I'm like, wow. And everyone was like, wow, something's wrong. I'm like, yeah, no kidding. But the great news about ISL is every week you kind of keep going and keep going. And so every week I was just getting a little better, 2 seconds here, 2 seconds there. And by the last competition of the ISL, I actually ended up breaking the American record and going best time. So, talking about setbacks and things like that, it's a story I like to tell because a lot of times people, especially swimmers, will get an injury or they'll get sick right before a big competition. I'm like, well, how am I supposed to compete? How am I supposed to swim best times? I'm like, you were training all year, right? You were doing everything right all the time. And all that doesn't just go away. It takes some time to find yourself. And, I went and swam that 200 breaststroke and went, 212 and my best time's at 202. That's not encouraging. But, the next week I got a little better and, it's 210, right? 208, 206. And by the last one I was 202. So it's just one of those things where, I think, I've had some physical injuries and stuff along the way, but I think it was just the body of work that I was doing. And obviously I had a lot of help with PT people and, doctors and stuff that really helped me out and rehab and all that stuff. But that's the thing I think of when it's like setbacks.
Walk me through your self-talk though at that time. Because I think that would be above all the thing that would stop and hang up most people. They'd be like, no, I'm done. I can't do this. I'm done.
Yeah. And I think it was, cause it's just funny. Cause I was, there was 50 shootouts of strokes and there ended up being a 50 shootout breaststroke. And I was actually benched from that. And it's like I'd probably be one of the best in the world at that specific thing. And I was benched cause I was swimming so poorly. And so,
who did it?
I think it was Caleb and Kevin. Yeah. So it's one of those things where, and then of course after that there wasn't another shootout, but it's one of those things where, you kind of have to just know that it's a process. And my mindset was, I was trying to do everything I could, even to okay, I was adding time because my walls were bad. So I was turning on my bad wrist. Maybe if I turn the other way. No, that's not a good idea. I was unfamiliar with how to turn the other way, right? So I'm still trying to plant on my wrist and it kept feeling like pain and that just got better. And I think I had to remind myself that, you trust the process is kind of blind faith a lot, but if you're kind of doing all the details right and you're training the way you should, then it will, the hard work will reveal itself at some point. And I think, that was kind of my mindset was I'm not going to go and go best time, but I'm going to get closer. And, each time I swim, I'm going to get a little healthier, and a little sharper. And, my wrist, instead of bending this much, it can bend this much. And, you get progress and, you take those little wins, right? And that, I was 208 in 2 weeks. Okay, well, at least I wasn't 212, right? That's 4 second drop. Sure. That's good.
It starts building some confidence.
Sure, yeah. It's living in the little wins for sure. That especially when you suffer a setback. But for me, it was mostly just faith in the process and the years of training that I had behind it, and that's what I tell kids a lot is when they get sick or injured right before a meet. It's like, okay, well, maybe you had to take a few days off, or maybe you had to, change one thing or do something else. But, if you put the body of work in, that will help you at the end of the day. And that's what I relied on a lot.
Love that. You got anything?
Yeah. The setback question would be really interesting if COVID hadn't happened, because almost to the day since at the time I was doing 400 IM was my big event. I think almost to the day, I thought I had food poisoning, and this was in the middle of lockdown. Dude. And my appendix was, I don't know, didn't rupture, but it was appendicitis. So that would have
That's freaky.
Been really bad if I was at trials and about to like try to make an Olympic team. I might not be here. I might have just stopped swimming. So it's a very interesting hypothetical to think of.
No.
But I think for me, I was just thinking from 2019, it's been every other year has been really good for me. So I think similar to what Nic was talking about, just having faith in the process and not dwelling on a bad year, because it does suck going all year. You, as a pro, you train for meets that are spread out throughout the year, but the sole focus for an entire year of training is pretty much on trying to qualify for the championship meet. And having the whole season, I guess you could consider a failure within 3 days where you might swim all your events is tough, but just still believing that you can do it, you have what it takes, and
learn from it.
Yeah. And after I mean, 2021 was specifically rough because of all the training time and stuff with COVID, but making that plan to go down to Texas and try to spark something up, and then making the world's team a few months after, that was a particularly early year too. Trials was in April that year. So 6 months after moving somewhere new, being on the highest of highs of it's working, and then I'll be like, I'm staying at Texas. And then the next year, swimming well, but not how I had the year before. And then just kind of wanting to go back. Just preface, nothing wrong with Texas. It's a great place. I feel like always worry people think something's bad with it when I say this, but I know my fiance was in grad school in Michigan. It's where I went to school. It's what I'm familiar with. It's Austin's a little overstimulating at times. So just making that big step decision to go back somewhere with new coaches 1 year, within a year of the next Olympic trials was a lot. But then just spending that whole year just trusting the process and trusting coaches, trusting yourself, knowing how to spend the time out of the pool to be beneficial towards the end of the season, and just kind of being on the ride and capitalizing on the things you learned over the bad years, I guess.
I love that too, because that actually relates really nicely to the audience, a lot of the audience listening as well. I get a lot of questions on social from younger generation, people wanting to get into the industry and really worried about taking those first few leaps and bounds, and realizing when they ask about the line trade that a lot of the times they have to move away from home in order to get in, but there's a lot of uncertainty around that. And I kind of say the same thing. Like, you have to trust the process. Like, step out, take that leap and just see where it goes. But you have to test, and you have to do that yourself. And it's a big leap for a lot of people, like in whatever industry you're in, whether you're swimming or whether you're just trying to like get a job in the trade. You got to like step out sometimes and just like trust that process is going to work out for you.
I mean, it's rare for any athlete to just only have successes. Mm-hmm. And like, you're going to lose a lot more races than you win in your career.
For sure.
And that's fine, but you have to treat it as learning experiences. And yeah, maybe goldfish memory, right? You forget the bad ones, but you learn from it too and kind of build on it. And yeah, I think that's important to realize too.
I think I was just thinking about, I mean, going through the whole process of moving somewhere and then moving back, 2 major moves across the country. When you're driving down to Texas or driving back up to Michigan, it might be like, why am I doing this? Am I making the right decision? But I mean, moving across the country isn't something you just do at the drop of a hat or whatever. But so you just there's a lot of thinking that goes into a lot of big decisions in your life. And you can't, right when the decision's happening, second guess it, because you know you're trying to make the right decision for yourself, and know that you've thought about it a lot and thought about the possibilities and the outcomes, and you definitely considered if it's not the right decision. So I think at the time that everything's happening, you should know that the decision is what is best for you, because you've considered, you've weighed all the outcomes. So with moving away, I guess, from home to join the trade, and I guess I can't speak. I've never been a lineman, but
it's the same thing. I can tell you from experience, it's the exact same thing.
But if it's what you want to do, there's a reason it's what you want to do, and you're making.
It's that right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And in the same sense, moving back, there can be like a negative response to having to move back as well. Sometimes like, I don't want to move back to my hometown, or I don't want to move back. But sometimes it just means like you've tried something, you've learned something from that. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a failure. Even if you're just saying, hey, I failed at this, I got to move back home or something. I got to move back to my hometown. No, it's not an L. It's like you've learned something by doing that. Now just go apply it somewhere else, even if that is your hometown again. Okay, one more question for you guys. Goals. What is the future looking like for you guys? Athletic goals or just like personal goals? What are you guys looking at?
So my wife and I welcomed a newborn recently, right after the games, which has been interesting timing, out of the frying pan and into the fire, right? But so I've been focused on just being a dad and kind of the family stuff, and it was kind of weird because with the job and swimming, I feel like my entire life has been, regimented in that I wake up at this time, I do this at this time, and on paternity leave, and my wife had maternity leave, so it was just like the three of us, obviously visitors, but it was like, when do you wake up? Whenever he wakes up. When do you go to bed? Whenever he goes to bed. And it's like, kind of experiencing that where you only focus on just like the three of us. It's been amazing. So a goal of mine is to just keep doing the dad thing and really trying to enjoy it. I think the career stuff will take care of itself, and a lot of that competitive fire and energy will be refocused into something like that, but mostly focused on just dad things right now, which is pretty cool.
I don't know how much you follow Mr. Olympia, like bodybuilding or whatever, but Chris Bumstead is a 6-time world champion. And he just like recently said the same thing. He's got a small child that's like months old, and he was like, he just retired too. And he's like, this is so cool because now I can like fully focus on being a dad and being a husband and just like my businesses and things like that. It's like a completely different shift. Yeah. What about for you, Charlie?
So I got engaged right after the Olympics, which was awesome.
Congrats.
And thank you. And so I moved back to Ann Arbor partially because my fiance is in grad school. She's in physical therapy school. And she graduates in August. So I think with her graduating in August, getting married in October, there might be a move in between there. I think our lease is up in August. So moving to wherever, figuring out all the logistics surrounding moving, coming back to Michigan for a wedding and whatnot will be interesting. But I think I'm looking forward to hopefully settling down somewhere more permanently than it has been the past 4 years. But and then just working, building the career up, and trying to apply everything I used to do in swimming to a different realm, and just trying to keep up a work ethic that I've had for so long.
Where would you love to live?
I don't know. We're all over the place. I mean, she might hate that I say this, but I have some good friends that live in Charleston. She thinks Denver would be cool. We thought about Seattle, but also that
is all over the place.
Yeah,
it's kind of cool thing. Like if you decide to stay within Quanta Services or whatever, that is a cool thing about Quanta is like you can probably find a home anywhere in North America.
So that'll come up later, but for now, enjoying it and trying to enjoy life and outside of the pool.
Cool.
Been good so far.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you guys on. Thanks for your insights and thanks for doing this.
Yeah, it's been
Thanks so much. Yeah, it's been fun.
Cool. Bye, everybody. I hope you guys got some value out of that episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I just want to draw your awareness to a couple of other things. So we make these podcasts, yes, but it's not the only thing that we put out as far as content. Our social medias are full of valuable cuts from the podcast itself, as well as just a bunch of other educational stuff and entertainment. So go follow us at Powerline Podcast on all social media platforms. And then also YouTube. I don't think that a lot of you are aware of this, But we don't just load these podcasts onto YouTube. We also make vlogs, which are super educational, entertaining, great place to direct people to learn about the industry, learn about the trade, or just learn about what's going on within either Quanta or the Powerline industry in general. So hit up our YouTube channel. Again, it's at Powerline Podcast. You can catch those vlogs on there. We also load a bunch of other extra content in video form. We try to up the quality every time we do this. We try to up that quality. So hit up the YouTube channel and make sure you're subbed to all those platforms. Appreciate you guys. Hope to see you again soon. We'll see you again soon. Peace.